Akuna was a warm-hearted woman that lived in Ojidi. She worked at a small boutique near the main market, where she helped customers find the perfect outfits with her ever-cheerful smile. Everyone in Ojidi knew Akuna as the kindest soul in town. Ojidi was a lively place, with busy roads lined with shops, schools, and churches. Young boys rode bicycles along the streets, and the aroma of roasted corn and fried plantains filled the air from roadside vendors. Akuna loved her life in the town. Though she didn't have much, she was content and always eager to help anyone in need. One Friday evening, as she waited at a bus stop after work, a sleek black car pulled up beside her. A tall, handsome man stepped out. He wore a sharp suit and carried himself with confidence. "Hi there," he said with a smile that could melt ice. "You look like you could use a ride." Akuna hesitated, but then smiled politely. "No, thank you. I'm fine waiting for the bus." The man chuckled. "I'm Obina," he said. "I'm new in town, and I couldn't help but notice your kind face. Are you sure you won't let me give you a lift?" Reluctantly, Akuna agreed. The ride was smooth, and Obina's charming words made her laugh. By the time they reached her house, she felt as if she had known him for years. From that day on, Obina kept showing up unexpectedly, bringing her flowers, texting her sweet messages, and making her feel special. Akuna's heart began to race whenever she thought of him. It felt like a fairy tale, but little did she know, this was only the beginning of a story that would change her life forever. Over the next few weeks, Obina became a constant presence in Akuna's life. He showed up at her boutique with lunch, sent her good morning texts every day, and always made time to listen to her stories about work. "Akuna, you're the kind of woman every man dreams of," he often said, his eyes twinkling with admiration. Akuna's friends at the boutique teased her endlessly. "Who is this man treating you like a queen? Does he have a brother?" they joked. Akuna would laugh, but deep down, she was thrilled. She had never met anyone like Obina. He seemed perfect, handsome, successful, and attentive. One Saturday evening, Obina invited Akuna to dinner at one of the finest restaurants in town. It was a place she had only seen in pictures, with sparkling chandeliers and a live band playing soft music. She wore her best dress, a simple yet elegant gown, and Obina couldn't stop complimenting her. "You look like a goddess," he said, holding her hand as they walked in. During dinner, Obina leaned forward and said, "Akuna, I know we haven't known each other for long, but I feel like I've found something special with you. I see a future with you. A beautiful one." Akuna's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't believe her ears. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. She smiled shyly and said, "You barely know me, Obina. How can you be so sure?" He reached for her hand and replied, "Sometimes when you know, you just know." As they left the restaurant that night, Akuna felt as though she was walking on clouds. She couldn't wait to tell her mother about the wonderful man who had come into her life. But in the shadows of Obina's charm lay secrets that Akuna could never have imagined. The next morning, Akuna couldn't contain her excitement. She rushed to her mother's house in the quieter part of Ogidi town. Her mother, Mama Nkechi, was sitting on the veranda, peeling cassava and humming a hymn when Akuna arrived. "Mama, I have something to tell you," Akuna said, her face glowing. Mama Nkechi looked up, smiling. "My daughter, what has made you so happy today? Tell me." Akuna sat beside her and began talking about Obina, the charming man who had swept her off her feet. She told her mother about the dinner at the fancy restaurant and how Obina said he saw a future with her. Mama Nkechi listened quietly, her hands still busy with the cassava. When Akuna finished, she sighed deeply and said, "My daughter, I am happy that you have found someone who makes you smile. But remember, not everything that glitters is gold. Take your time, learn who this man truly is before giving him your heart." Akuna frowned. "Mama, why are you saying this? Obina is a good man. He's kind, respectful, and he treats me like I'm the most important person in the world." Mama Nkechi put down the cassava and held Akuna's hand. "Akuna, you have a good heart, but love is not just about sweet words and gifts. You must watch his actions. A man's true nature is revealed not by what he says, but by what he does when no one is watching." Akuna nodded, but in her heart, she felt her mother didn't understand. Obina seemed perfect. Why couldn't Mama Nkechi see that? Later that evening, as Akuna lay in bed, her mother's words echoed in her mind. But she quickly pushed them aside, choosing instead to focus on the joy Obina brought her. Little did Akuna know, Mama Nkechi's warning would soon become a reality. Akuna and Obina's relationship grew stronger, or so it seemed. He showered her with attention and gifts, always finding new ways to make her smile. He even started talking about meeting her family, which made Akuna feel like she was living in a fairy tale. One Friday evening, Obinna invited her to his apartment for dinner. It was a cozy space in a quiet part of Ogidi town, tastefully decorated with modern furniture and art. "I made something special for you," he said, gesturing toward the dining table. It was set with steaming plates of jollof rice, grilled chicken, and a bottle of wine. As they ate and laughed, Akuna felt more certain than ever that Obinna was the man for her. But just as she was about to tell him how happy he made her, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his smile faded. "Excuse me for a moment," he said, picking up the phone and walking into the bedroom. Akuna didn't mean to eavesdrop, but his voice was loud and the tone was unlike anything she had heard before. "I told you not to call me at this time. What is wrong with you?" he hissed. Her heart skipped a beat. Who was he talking to? She tried to ignore it, convincing herself it must be a business call. But when he returned, his face was stiff and the warmth in his eyes had disappeared. "Is everything okay?" Akuna asked gently. "Just work stress," he replied quickly, forcing a smile. "Nothing for you to worry about." Though his words were reassuring, Akuna couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in her chest. That night, as she lay in bed, her mother's warning replayed in her mind. A man's true nature is revealed not by what he says, but by what he does when no one is watching. But Akuna pushed her doubts aside, choosing to believe in the love she thought she had found. Days passed, and Akuna tried to forget the strange phone call. Obinna seemed to return to his usual self, charming, attentive, and loving. He even began talking about their future together. "Akuna," he said one evening as they strolled through a park, "I want us to build a life together. You're the woman I've been searching for." Akuna's heart swelled with joy. She felt certain she had found her soulmate, but deep down, a tiny voice reminded her of that night in his apartment. She pushed it away, convincing herself that no relationship was perfect. Then one day, something unusual happened. Akuna was at the boutique when a woman walked in, holding a child. The woman looked tired but carried herself with confidence. She browsed the store for a while before walking up to Akuna at the counter. "Are you Akuna?" the woman asked. "Yes, I am," Akuna replied, smiling politely. The woman looked her straight in the eye. "I'm Adora. I'm Obinna's wife." Akuna froze. Her heart raced and her palms grew sweaty. She wanted to believe this was some kind of mistake. "What do you mean?" she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. Adora sighed. "Obinna and I have been married for 6 years. We have this little boy together," she said, nodding toward the child, who was playing with a toy car. "I don't know what he's told you, but he's not who you think he is." Akuna felt the world around her crumble. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Obinna? Married? It didn't make sense. "I'm sorry," Adawara continued. "I just thought you should know the truth before he drags you deeper into his lies." As the woman walked out, leaving Akuna standing there in shock, her mother's warning echoed louder than ever in her mind. Not everything that glitters is gold. That evening, Akuna sat alone in her room, tears streaming down her face. She needed answers, and she knew exactly who to ask. Akuna barely slept that night. Her mind raced with questions. How could Obinna do this to her? Everything he said, every sweet word and promise, was it all a lie? The next day, she decided she couldn't wait any longer. She needed to confront him. She called Obinna and asked him to meet her at a quiet cafe in town. He agreed, his voice as cheerful as ever, unaware of what was coming. When he arrived, Obinna greeted her with his usual charming smile. "My beautiful Akuna," he said, leaning in for a hug, but she stepped back. "Obinna, we need to talk," she said firmly. His smile faltered. "What's wrong? You look upset." Akuna took a deep breath. "Who is Adaora?" she asked, her voice trembling but steady. For a moment, Obinna's expression froze. It was as if she had caught him off guard, but he quickly recovered, laughing nervously. "Adaora? I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me, Obinna," Akuna snapped, her voice rising. "She came to my boutique yesterday. She told me everything about your marriage, about your child. How could you do this to me?" Obinna's face darkened, and his charming demeanor disappeared. "Akuna, it's not what you think," he said, his voice lower now. "Yes, Adaora is my wife, but things are complicated. We've been having problems for years. I was going to tell you. I just needed the right time." Akuna stared at him, disbelief etched across her face. "So you lied to me? You let me believe you were single. that we had a future together? Do you even understand what you've done to me? Obina reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Akuna, please. I care about you. What I have with Adora is over. It's just a matter of time before we finalize things. But Akuna couldn't believe a word he said anymore. You betrayed my trust, Obina. I can't do this, she said, her voice breaking as tears filled her eyes. She stood up, leaving him sitting there alone. As she walked out of the cafe, her heart felt heavy, but a small part of her felt stronger. She knew this wasn't the end of the pain, but it was the beginning of a lesson she needed to learn. Akuna spent the next few days in a fog of sadness and disbelief. She stayed home, unable to face the world or explain to her friends why she looked so broken. Her heart ached with the weight of Obina's betrayal. The man she had trusted, the man who had promised her a future, had built their relationship on lies. Mama Nkechi came to visit after hearing that Akuna hadn't been to work. She found her daughter curled up on the couch, her eyes red from crying. Without saying a word, Mama Nkechi sat beside her and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Mama, Akuna whispered, her voice trembling. You were right. Obina wasn't who I thought he was. He's married, Mama. He has a wife and a child. Mama Nkechi sighed deeply, pulling Akuna into a warm embrace. Oh, my daughter, I wish I could take this pain away from you, but sometimes the heart must learn its lessons the hard way. Akuna cried in her mother's arms, feeling the comfort she desperately needed. Mama, how could he do this to me? He said he loved me. I believed him. I trusted him. Mama Nkechi gently stroked her hair. There are people in this world who wear masks, my child. They say the right things, do the right things, but their hearts are filled with deceit. That is why I told you to be careful. But don't let this break you, Akuna. Let it make you wiser. For the first time in days, Akuna felt a glimmer of strength. Her mother's words reminded her that she couldn't let Obina's lies define her. Later that evening, as she sat alone, Akuna picked up her phone and stared at Obina's number. Part of her wanted to call him, to demand more answers, to scream at him for what he had done. But instead, she deleted his number. It was time to start healing. It wouldn't be easy, but Akuna promised herself that she would move forward. She would rebuild her heart, piece by piece, and learn to protect it better. Akuna slowly began rebuilding her life. She threw herself into work, spending extra hours at the boutique and reconnecting with old friends. Though her heart still ached, she found comfort in the support of her loved ones, especially her mother. One evening, Mama Nkechi sat with Akuna on the veranda, peeling oranges. My daughter, she said, her voice gentle. Every experience in life comes with a lesson. What have you learned from all this? Akuna thought for a moment before responding. I've learned that love isn't just about words, Mama. It's about truth and actions. I trusted Obina because he said all the right things, but I didn't look deeper. I let my heart lead without thinking carefully. Mama Nkechi nodded, her face filled with wisdom. That is a good lesson, my child. Love should never make you feel less or leave you questioning yourself. The right person will bring light into your life, not confusion or pain. That night, Akuna wrote in her journal, reflecting on her journey. She realized she had grown stronger through her heartbreak. She had learned to trust her instincts, value herself, and listen to the wise counsel of those who cared for her. The story of Akuna teaches us that love should never be rushed. It is important to take time to truly know someone before giving them your heart. Words and charm may be convincing, but actions reveal a person's true character. Akuna's experience reminds us to trust ourselves, listen to the advice of those who care for us, and value our own worth. Even in heartbreak, there are lessons that can make us wiser and stronger.